The first thing Elias Ward felt was the cold. It wasn't the biting chill of deep space or the sterile, artificial freeze of cryosleep. This was something else, something primal. He blinked, his vision swimming as his senses dragged themselves out of the abyss of unconsciousness. His body ached. The dull throb before this moment had not been in his favor. The air was thick and metallic. A scent he knew all too well, processed oxygen, oil, and the unmistakable stench of fear. Elias tried to move, but metal restraints into his wrists and ankles. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was in the steel wrapped around him, chaining him to something solid. As his senses sharpened, he realized he wasn't alone. A low groan echoed nearby. Then another. Through the haze, he recognized Darius Dare Kane, slumped against a wall, blinking blearily. Beyond him, others, human, alien, all restrained, all waking up to the same nightmare. A voice crackled through the air, mechanical, cold, and filled with something that sent Elias's stomach into a knot. Fascinating. They're waking up faster than anticipated. Lights flared overhead, blinding. Elias winced but didn't look away. He forced himself to take in the room. Steel walls, dark panels pulsing with violet energy, containment fields flickering along the edges. It wasn't a cell. It was a processing chamber. Then the floor shifted beneath them. A slow, stomach-churning realization sank in as he recognized the distant roar of something massive beyond the walls. Not machinery, not engines. A crowd. Subjects, welcome, the voice continued, dripping with satisfaction. Your presence here is an honor. You will be the first of your kind to grace the grand arena of Krelox. The finest minds in the galaxy will be watching as we test the limits of your species. And, of course, there will be bets. Elias' heartbeat thundered in his chest, not with fear, but with something sharper. Dare exhaled sharply, his voice hoarse. Tell me this is some kind of messed up dream. Elias flexed his fingers, testing the restraints, eyes already scanning for weaknesses. If it is, we're in the worst part. With a deafening hiss, the walls around them peeled open, revealing a sight that sent a sharp jolt of adrenaline through his veins. They weren't on a ship. They were in a cage. Beyond them stretched a monstrous, sprawling arena, 20 stories high, surrounded by thousands, maybe millions of alien spectators. The roar of the crowd was deafening, an ocean of hungry anticipation, eyes glimmering with the thrill of imminent carnage. And in the center of the battlefield, waiting for them, was something not of this universe. A second voice joined the first, older, colder. Begin the experiment. A deafening alarm blared, and the restraints snapped open. Elias barely had time to take a breath before the gates of the arena slammed shut behind them. The moment the restraints were released, Elias didn't hesitate. Instinct took over. He lunged forward, grabbing Dare's arm, and hauling him to his feet, just as the floor beneath them rumbled like a beast stirring in its sleep. The crowd above erupted into a frenzied roar, alien voices merging into an overwhelming cacophony of excitement. The air was thick with heat and something else, something primal. Dare wiped from his brow, eyes flicking around their surroundings. Ward, tell me you've got a plan. Elias didn't answer. Not yet. He was too busy reading the battlefield. The arena was massive, too massive. The walls stretched high, smooth metal reinforced with energy fields that crackled like a caged storm. There was no cover, no immediate weaponry in sight. But he knew one thing for certain. They weren't alone. Across the battlefield, emerging from a gate opposite theirs, the monster arrived. The first thing Elias saw were its eyes, twin orbs of liquid gold, burning with intelligence and something worse. It was massive, easily 12 feet tall on all fours, a hybrid of muscle and armor plating, shifting plates of organic steel along its shoulders and spine. Its maw was lined with serrated teeth, dripping with saliva that sizzled as it hit the ground. Its breath was a furnace, distorting the air around it. Dare cursed under his breath. That's not a beast. That's an order. The creature let out a low growl, a sound that reverberated through Elias's chest. It was studying them. Elias' mind raced. He knew how these games worked. The aliens watching from their luxurious seats didn't want a quick. They wanted a spectacle. He turned to Dare. No sudden movements. Keep your eyes on me. Dare tensed. You have a plan? Elias' lips barely moved. I'm working on it. The beast took a step forward. The ground trembled. Dare shifted. You better work fast. The moment stretched into eternity. The beast lowered its head, claws scraping against the arena floor, muscles coiled, primed to act. The air crackled with tension. And then the lights flickered. Just for a second, a flicker. But Elias saw it. The arena's energy grid pulsed out of sync for a fraction of a heartbeat, like a machine struggling to maintain control. The creature lunged. Elias moved. He charged forward. The crowd gasped as Elias closed the distance, slipping low, using momentum and instinct over brute strength. The beast's claws missed by inches, slicing through empty air as Elias threw himself beneath its massive frame. Dare shouted something. Elias barely heard it. His focus was on the creature's underbelly. Unlike the plated armor along its back, its stomach was softer and more organic, not unprotected. Elias hit the ground and rolled. The beast snarled, pivoting faster than he'd anticipated. It lashed out with its tail. Elias barely managed to twist away before it struck the ground with enough force. And in that moment, something clicked. The strange delay in the beast's attack pattern, the way it didn't pursue him immediately, but instead seemed to wait, like something was controlling it. Kralox wasn't just testing their combat skills. They were testing how quickly humans could analyze patterns. And Elias Ward had just found his way out. He scrambled to his feet, turning sharply toward Dare. I need you to find the nearest maintenance panel. Dare blinked. What? Dare hesitated for only a second before taking off toward the outer ring of the arena, boots pounding against the metal floor. The beast snarled and whipped its head around, toward Dare. Elias didn't think, and he acted. The sound snapped through the air, redirecting the creature's attention at the last second. The beast growled, hesitating just long enough for Elias to move. Dare reached the outer ring, hands flying across the panel. His voice came through, breathless. Ward, I swear to God, if this is one of your insane, just trust me, Elias said. For the first time, Elias saw the inside of the arena's control grid. Kralox had built this place to be unbreakable. They'd designed the system so no prisoner could ever gain access. But what they hadn't counted on, what no one in this galaxy seemed to count on, was that humans didn't break rules. Elias' grin widened. Dare, tell me you can rewire this thing. Dare stared at the exposed grid, scanning it in real time. Not all of it, but enough to give you 5 seconds of chaos. Elias exhaled. I only need 3. The beast lunged again. Dare yanked a wire free. And for the first time, the arena glitched. The force fields flickered. The lighting system crashed. And in that moment of pure, perfect darkness, Elias Ward moved. The roar of the crowd disappeared. The creature hesitated, its bio-enhanced senses suddenly blind. Elias was not. He struck fast and hard, using the distraction to move behind the beast, seizing one of the detached metal bars from the cage walls, sharp, jagged, and now a weapon. The lights flared back to life just in time for the crowd to see it. A human, unarmed, standing atop the arena's apex predator. Elias stared straight into the watching cameras, into the eyes of every alien spectator, every twisted, entertained monster sitting in their luxury seats. The silence that followed was unnatural, a moment of suspended disbelief, where thousands of alien spectators struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Elias stood atop the beast, breathing steadily, despite the adrenaline roaring through his veins. The predator was still alive, barely, but it was no longer the apex danger in the arena. Elias was. Then, like a tidal wave crashing against steel, the roar of the crowd returned, louder, wilder, and different. This was no longer the anticipatory hunger of an audience expecting. Somewhere in the galaxy, odds were shifting, credits were being lost, and for the first time in their history, the Kralox overlords had doubt in their voices. But Elias knew the real test hadn't even begun. The arena gates slammed open once more, but this time, no beast emerged. Instead, a squad of Kralox enforcers, clad in segmented exo-armor, stormed onto the field. Their weapons, sleek and unfamiliar, hummed with pulsing blue energy. Elias didn't flinch. He had expected this. He had just rewritten the rules of the game, and the masters of this pit weren't going to let him get away with it. Dare's voice crackled in his ear, hacked into the arena's comms. Of course. Ward, I hope you've got another insane plan because they don't look happy. Elias flexed his grip on the metal bar. They're scared. Dare scoffed. Yeah. Well, fear comes with a lot of things. You might want to move. The first rang out, sizzling past Elias's shoulder, melting part of the debris behind him. Elias moved. He leaped from the fallen beast. His instincts had always been sharp, but here, in this moment, they were a weapon all their own. He zigzagged across the arena floor, closing the gap between himself and the first enforcer. As the enforcer adjusted his aim, Elias' counterattack, slid low, grabbed a loose plate of armor from the wreckage, and used it as an improvised shield. Elias used the momentum to roll forward, straight into the enforcer's legs. The alien grunted as it staggered, and Elias didn't hesitate. He moved like a soldier and fought like a survivor. The enforcer didn't even have time to process the shift before Elias turned the weapon against him. Blue plasma slammed into alien armor, sending the enforcer sprawling backward, unconscious. Dare's laugh came through the comms. Okay, that was pretty. Elias didn't have time for pride. More enforcers advanced. He gritted his teeth. Dare. Tell me you've got that maintenance panel doing something useful. Then a delighted hum. Oh, I've got all kinds of things happening back here. The arena lights flickered. Not a malfunction this time, a controlled disruption. Then, without warning, half the force fields around the battlefield collapsed. Elias's pulse spiked. That was not what he had expected. A guttural roar ripped through the air as prisoners from the adjacent containment zones spilled into the arena. Some were alien gladiators who had long since lost their will to resist. And in that moment, as they turned in alarm to face the chaos Dare had just unleashed, Elias made a choice. Elias activated his comm. Listen up. If you want to live, you fight. If you want to be free, you fight smart. The Kraloks think we're their entertainment. Let's make them regret it. The enforcers tried to rally, but they weren't prepared for a war breaking out in their own cage. Prisoners who had spent years being used as living entertainment turned on their captors. Some wielded scavenged weapons. Others fought. Elias led. He moved through the battlefield like a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Every broken system was an opportunity. He coordinated with the others, using terrain, using tactics, using what the Kraloks never expected from a species like his intelligence. In the chaos, Dare's voice crackled back on the comms. Ward, you are not going to believe what I just found. Elias kicks a weapon toward an allied prisoner. Surprise me. There was a pause. Then Dare said 3 words that changed everything. I found the exit. The battlefield stilled. The fight didn't stop. Not entirely, but Elias felt the shift. The prisoners weren't just fighting for another minute of survival. They were fighting for a way out. Elias inhaled sharply, eyes scanning the battlefield. They could do this. They could actually do this. But then the sky itself opened up. A new voice entered the comm system, deep, rasping, and unmistakably Kraloks. You have amused us long enough. The air is charged with raw energy. Elias's grip tightened around his stolen rifle. He met Dare's gaze across the battlefield. For the first time, his friend looked at him not with disbelief, but with absolute trust. Elias exhaled, rolling his shoulders, shaking the sweat and blood from his hands. Then he lifted his weapon and smiled. Good. He turned to face the warship overhead. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. The warship loomed overhead, a monstrous shadow blotting out the sky. The sound vibrates through the arena floor. The Kraloks had abandoned all pretense of spectacle. They weren't here to entertain anymore. They were here to end this. Dare's voice cut through the noise, tight with urgency. Ward, I don't know what you're thinking, but whatever it is, think faster. Elias exhaled, rolling his shoulders, his mind already racing. Surrender wasn't an option. That left only one way forward. He turned, his voice steady. Dare. Tell me you've got eyes on that warship's weak spots. There was a brief silence. Then, the answer came. Yeah, but you're not gonna like it. Elias grinned despite the weight pressing down on his chest. I never like it.
Their core is vulnerable when they cycle power to the main thrusters,
Dare continued, voice faster now. I can disrupt their shielding, but it'll only give you 5 seconds. Elias' grip tightened on his rifle. That's all I need. Dare hesitated. You know this is impossible, right? Elias breathed deeply, feeling the adrenaline steady his limbs. Not yet. Elias moved. With a surge of motion, he sprinted across the battlefield, dodging through the wreckage, his eyes locked on the towering debris of a fallen structure. It was tall enough, just barely. The warship was descending lower, lining up for a precision strike. He launched himself onto the first ledge, boots scraping against twisted metal as he climbed, pushing his body beyond exhaustion. Plasma fire erupted behind him, scorching the ground where he had stood moments before. The Krelloks were trying to cut him down before he could even attempt whatever insane stunt he was planning. The battlefield blurred around him. He could hear shouts, the clash of combat continuing below, but none of it mattered. He reached the top, chest heaving. The warship was right there, hovering just above him, its thrusters glowing a blinding white as power cycled through its core. Elias activated his comm. Dare. Dare's voice came through, laced with disbelief. You're really doing this? Hit it, Elias screamed. The lights in the arena flickered. For a fraction of a second, the warship hesitated, and at that moment, Elias leaped. The world seemed to slow as he soared through open air, the sheer drop beneath him forgotten. His weapon was already raised, his breath steady. It struck the core's shielding, cracking it. Its cannon core ruptured, and suddenly, the sky was filled with light. Elias felt the impact before he heard it, the force hurling him backward. He twisted mid-air, arms flailing. Then something caught him. A Sundari. One of the alien prisoner, their form shimmering with raw energy, had reached out, pulling him from the fall. For a heartbeat, they locked eyes. No words passed between them, but understanding did. Then, with a controlled burst of energy, the Sundari threw Elias back toward solid ground. He crashed down hard, rolling into a crouch. His body screamed in protest, but he was alive. And as he looked up, he saw what he had done. The warship was falling. Its engines sputtered, the glow of its thrusters flickering as it spiraled toward the far end of the arena. The audience, those who had once cheered for blood, were now screaming for an entirely different reason. The Krelloks had lost control. Dare's voice crackled through the comms, breathless. Ward, you actually did it. Elias wiped a streak of dirt from his face, letting out a shaky laugh. You sound surprised. The battlefield was eerily still. Elias turned, scanning the wreckage. The Krelloks enforcers had stopped fighting. Some had dropped their weapons entirely. The tide had turned so completely that even the most hardened soldiers of the Empire understood what had just happened. For the first time, the Krelloks were overwhelmed, and in that silence, Elias stepped forward, his voice carrying across the battlefield. This arena belongs to us now. No one argued. Smoke curled from the wreckage of the warship, its frame still glowing. The once gilded arena, built as a monument to control, now stood as a battlefield of shattered steel and flickering force fields. The roar of the crowd had died, replaced by stunned silence. For the first time in the history of Krelloks' empire, they weren't watching a slaughter. They were witnessing a revolution. Elias exhaled, rolling his stiff shoulders as he surveyed the field. Around him stood tall, their eyes reflecting something that hadn't existed here before. Dare approached, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes were alive. Tell me we're not just standing here waiting for their reinforcements to show up. Elias smirked. We're not. Dare raised an eyebrow. Because, buddy, I love a dramatic pause as much as the next guy, but we're gonna need an actual plan. A low thrum filled the air, a vibration through the ground, pulsing with energy. The massive central holoscreen, once used to broadcast gladiatorial odds and highlight reels of brutal executions, flickered to life. And then, a face appeared. Krelloks' High Overseer Valen. His reptilian features were unreadable, but the tension in his expression betrayed something Elias hadn't seen worry about. You have no idea what you've just done, Valen said, his voice unnervingly calm. This defiance will not go unanswered. Elias crossed his arms, unimpressed. You say that like you still have control. Valen barely blinked. We have control of everything. You have won nothing. This arena was just one system in a much larger empire. You believe you have gained your freedom. But no. A murmur ran through the freed prisoners. Some shifted uneasily. Others clenched their fists, but none stepped back. Elias held Valen's gaze, then slowly, deliberately, turned to look around at the warriors, survivors, who had fought beside him. The scars on their bodies told stories of torment. He turned back to the holoscreen. You built this place to challenge us, Elias said, his voice quiet but carrying across the battlefield. You forced us to fight? To struggle. to survive while you sat back and watched. He took a step forward, eyes locked on Valen. But what you never understood, what you never even considered, was that you weren't making us weaker. You were making us stronger. Valen's nostrils flared slightly, but he remained silent. Elias pressed on. You think your empire is untouchable? That your reach is endless? His smirk was sharp, defiant. Maybe it is, but here's the thing. You made a mistake when you let us live long enough to learn how to fight back. And now? He spread his arms, gesturing to the gathered warriors. Now, you don't just have a rebellion on your hands, you have an army. The hollow screen glitched for half a second. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Valen's face before he steeled himself. This will be your only warning, the overseer said. His voice edged with something dangerously close to frustration. Surrender. Lay down your weapons. Accept your place beneath us. And you may yet live. Elias just laughed. Not a forced chuckle. A real, genuine laugh. You don't get it, do you? He shook his head, stepping closer to the flickering display. We're not asking for our lives. We're taking them back. Valen's expression hardened. Then, the holoscreen cut to static. Silence stretched across the battlefield. Then Dare clapped a hand on Elias's shoulder, shaking his head. You really like poking the bear, don't you? Elias grinned. Only when the bear thinks it owns the cage. From the far side of the arena, one of the freed prisoners, a towering, four-armed warrior from a species Elias didn't recognize, stepped forward. Elias turned, eyes scanning the battlefield. The people, his people, now. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were something else entirely. He took a breath. Then, with all the certainty in the world, and the galaxy would never be the same again.